Story 1. I've been a construction site manager for 15 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. Angry neighbors complaining about noise at reasonable hours, people trying to sneak onto active sites to take pictures, even someone who tried to steal our cement mixer once. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened last month when we started working on the Henderson property. It was supposed to be a straightforward job. The Hendersons wanted to add a second story to their single-level home. All permits were in order, we had city approval, and we'd notified everyone in the neighborhood about the construction schedule as required by law. We even went the extra mile and distributed flyers with my contact information in case anyone had concerns. The first week went smoothly. My crew and I started at 8 a.m. each day, as allowed by city ordinance, and wrapped up by 5 p.m. We were making good progress on the foundation reinforcement when she showed up. It was a Tuesday morning around 9:30. I was reviewing blueprints with my foreman when I noticed a woman marching across the yard, waving her arms frantically. She was wearing what looked like a caftan covered in celestial patterns, at least 5 different necklaces, and had her hair wrapped in some kind of purple scarf. "You need to stop this immediately," she yelled before she'd even reached us. I put on my professional smile and walked over to meet her at the edge of the property. Me, "Good morning, ma'am. Is there something I can help you with?" "Woman, you need to stop all this hammering right now. It's disrupting the entire neighborhood." Me, "I'm sorry to hear that it's bothering you. We're operating within the city's noise ordinance hours. If you'd like, I can show you our permits and—" "Woman, I don't care about your permits. The vibrations from your hammers are completely throwing off my crystal's energy field." I blinked a few times, trying to make sure I'd heard her correctly. Me, "Your crystals?" "Woman, yes, I have an extensive crystal collection that I use for healing and meditation. They're precisely arranged to channel positive energies throughout my home, and your constant banging is disrupting their vibrational frequencies. I'd dealt with many complaints before, but this was a first. I tried to remain professional. Me, "I understand this is inconvenient, but we're doing construction work that's been approved by the city. There will inevitably be some noise, but we'll be finished with the loudest part of the project within 2 weeks." "Woman, 2 weeks? That's completely unacceptable. Do you have any idea what prolonged vibrational interference can do to a properly aligned crystal grid? It could take months to recalibrate them." Me, "I'm sorry, but we can't stop the construction. The homeowners have paid for this work, and we have all the necessary permits." Woman, "Well, I never received any notice about this." I reached into my truck and pulled out a clipboard with the signed delivery confirmations for our notification flyers. Me, "According to our records, a flyer was delivered to every home within 500 feet of this property, including yours. What address are you at?" Woman, 437 Maple Street. I flipped through the pages and found the entry. Me, "Yes, here it is. Delivered and signed for by. Is your last name Wilkins?" Woman, "That's my husband. He never told me about any flyer." Me, "I'm sorry about that miscommunication, but we've followed all proper procedures." The woman who I would later learn was named Doreen Wilkins glared at me with such intensity that I half expected her eyes to shoot lasers. "Doreen? Well, you're going to have to work around my schedule. I do my crystal meditation between 8 a.m. and noon, and again from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I almost laughed before I realized she was serious. Me, "Ma'am, that would leave us with only 2 working hours per day. That's not feasible for a construction project." Doreen, "That's not my problem. My spiritual well-being takes precedence over somebody's vanity renovation." Me, "I'm sorry, but we'll be continuing our work as planned." Doreen, "We'll see about that." She stormed off, and I naively thought that would be the end of it. I was very, very wrong. The next morning, Doreen returned with a spray bottle filled with what she called energetically charged water and proceeded to spray it around the perimeter of the property while chanting. My crew tried to ignore her, but it was distracting, to say the least. On Thursday, she brought a portable speaker and blasted what sounded like whale songs mixed with wind chimes at an uncomfortable volume, claiming she was counterbalancing our negative vibrations. When that didn't work, she stood at the edge of the property holding a large amethyst above her head for nearly an hour. Friday was when things escalated. I arrived at the site to find Doreen had set up a card table on the sidewalk with a petition demanding our work hours be restricted. She'd somehow convinced a few neighbors to sign it, mostly by telling them we were violating noise ordinances we weren't. When I approached her, she immediately went on the offensive. Doreen, the destroyer of spiritual harmony has arrived. I've got 10 signatures already from people who agree you're disrupting the neighborhood. Me, we're operating completely within legal guidelines, and the homeowners have every right to renovate their property. Doreen, legal guidelines don't account for metaphysical disruption. The electromagnetic field in my meditation room is completely chaotic now. Me, I'm sorry, but that's not something we can address. We'll continue working as planned. Doreen, I've contacted the city council about this. Me, feel free to do so. They're the ones who approved our permits. The following Monday, things took an even stranger turn. I arrived to find Doreen had set up what looked like a miniature Stonehenge made of crystals on the public sidewalk directly in front of the construction site. Doreen, this crystal grid will redirect your negative vibrations back to you. By the end of the day, your equipment will start malfunctioning. My foreman, who'd been remarkably patient until now, rolled his eyes. Foreman, boss, this is getting ridiculous. She's blocking access for our delivery trucks. He was right, the crystal arrangement was partially blocking the sidewalk where we needed to bring in materials. Me, ma'am, you need to remove these items from the public walkway. They're creating a safety hazard. Doreen, they're staying right where they are. This is spiritual self-defense. Me, then I'll have to call the police to have them removed. Doreen, go ahead. The authorities need to know what's happening here anyway. I called the non-emergency police line, and an officer arrived about 20 minutes later. He was professional but clearly confused by the situation. Officer, so, these rocks are the problem. Me, they're blocking our delivery access, and this woman has been harassing our crew for nearly a week now. Doreen, I am protecting my home from vibrational assault. These are not just rocks, they're high-frequency crystalline structures capable of energy transmutation. The officer looked at me with an expression that clearly said, I didn't sign up for this. Officer, ma'am, you need to remove these items from the public sidewalk. It's a violation of city code to obstruct public walkways. Doreen, this is persecution. You're all conspiring against spiritual practitioners. Despite her protests, Doreen eventually removed her crystal grid when the officer made it clear she could be cited. But before leaving, she pointed at me dramatically. Doreen, this isn't over. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The next day, Doreen didn't show up, and I foolishly hoped she'd given up. Instead, she was gathering reinforcements. Wednesday morning, she returned with 3 friends, all similarly dressed and adorned with crystals. They formed a circle on the public sidewalk and began chanting while holding various stones above their heads. This continued for 3 days straight. They weren't technically trespassing, but they were creating a spectacle that was distracting my crew and drawing attention from passers-by. One of Doreen's friends even tried to cleanse one of our workers by waving a smoky quartz around him when he went to his truck for tools. By the end of the second week, I'd had enough. I contacted our company's lawyer, who advised me to document everything and file for a restraining order based on harassment and interference with business operations. I spent the weekend gathering evidence, photos of Doreen's antics, statements from my crew, a log of all her visits and actions, and video recordings from our security cameras that showed her attempting to enter the construction site after hours to place crystals around our equipment. On Monday, I filed the paperwork for a temporary restraining order. The judge granted it surprisingly quickly, likely because of the video evidence showing Doreen trespassing on an active construction site, which posed serious safety and liability issues. When the restraining order was served, Doreen went ballistic. She showed up at the edge of the property, staying just outside the 100-foot boundary specified in the order, and screamed about cosmic justice and karmic retribution. Her friends joined her in what they called an energy boycott of the entire street, walking up and down the sidewalk with signs that read, "Vibrational pollution is still pollution," and "Crystal rights are human rights." The final showdown came a week later when Doreen violated the restraining order by entering the property at night and placing what she later described as a protection circle of salt and crushed crystals around our cement mixer. Our night security guard caught her in the act, and she was briefly detained by police. After that incident, the city issued its own cease and desist order against Doreen, prohibiting her from coming within 500 feet of any construction site in the city limits. She apparently had a history of similar behavior that none of us had known about. The remainder of our project proceeded without crystal-related incidents, though occasionally we'd spot Doreen driving slowly past the site, glaring at us from her car, which, I couldn't help but notice, had at least 20 crystal sun catchers hanging from the rearview mirror. The Hendersons got their second-story addition completed on schedule, despite the metaphysical interference. And every now and then, when we're hammering particularly hard on a new project, one of my crew members will jokingly ask if we're disturbing the crystal vibrations. It's become something of a running joke in our company. As for me, I've updated our pre-construction checklist to include check neighborhood for crystal practitioners. You never know what or who you might encounter in this line of work. Story 2. I've been working at the Natural History Museum for about 3 years now. I love my job as a museum guide. Most days are pretty routine. I take groups through the exhibits, answer questions about dinosaurs, and occasionally have to remind excited kids not to touch the displays. But what happened last Saturday was something completely different. It's the kind of story you'd only believe if you saw it with your own eyes. It was a busy weekend, as usual. School vacation meant we had twice the normal number of visitors, mostly families with children of all ages. I was stationed in the main dinosaur hall that day, where our pride and joy stands tall, a complete Allosaurus skeleton that's over 200 million years old. It's one of the most complete specimens in the world, and it's absolutely breathtaking. I was answering a young boy's questions about dinosaur diets when I heard a commotion at the far end of the hall. At first, I thought maybe someone had fainted or gotten sick. It happens sometimes when the hall gets too crowded and stuffy. But then I heard that unmistakable tone, the kind that makes every customer service worker's skin crawl. "You know the one?" Excuse me. I said I need help over here." I excused myself from the boy and his parents and made my way over to the voice. Standing there was a woman in her 40s, wearing designer sunglasses pushed up on her head and holding her phone in one hand. Next to her was a boy around 7 or 8, looking bored. "Me, hi there, how can I help you?" The woman barely looked at me before pointing at the Allosaurus. "Woman, I need someone to help my son climb up on that dinosaur for a photo. It's for his science project." I blinked, certain I had misheard her. "Me, I'm sorry, but did you say you want your son to climb on the dinosaur?" Woman: "Yes, are you deaf? It's for his school project. We need a photo of him riding it. Just for a minute." I took a deep breath. We deal with some strange requests, but this was a new one. "Me, ma'am, I'm sorry, but that's absolutely not possible. That's a 200-million-year-old fossil. It's irreplaceable and extremely fragile. No one is allowed to touch the exhibits, let alone climb on them." Her eyes narrowed, and her mouth formed a tight line. "Woman, do you know who I am? My husband is on the board of the Children's Museum downtown. We donate thousands to museums every year." "Me, that's very generous, but our policy applies to everyone. No exceptions. Those bones are irreplaceable pieces of natural history." Woman: "It's just a bunch of old bones. My son needs this for his education. Don't you care about children's education?" By this point, a small crowd had started to gather. I noticed several people had their phones out, probably recording the interaction. Great. Me: "I care very much about education. which is why I'm explaining that these are priceless scientific specimens. Your son can take photos from behind the barrier like everyone else. I'd be happy to suggest some angles that would look great for his project. The woman's face was getting redder by the second. Woman, this is ridiculous. I'm a taxpayer. My money pays for all this. Me, actually. Most of our funding comes from private donations and entry fees. And regardless, the rules exist to preserve these specimens for future generations. She turned to her son, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Woman, come on, sweetie. This lady doesn't want to help us. We'll just do it ourselves. Before I could respond, she grabbed her son's hand and marched toward the low barrier rope that surrounds the Allosaurus. I immediately radioed security. Me, security, we have a situation in Dinosaur Hall. A visitor is attempting to breach the exhibit barrier. I hurried after her just as she was lifting the rope for her son to duck under. Me, ma'am, stop right there. If you cross that barrier, I'll have to call security to escort you out of the museum. Woman, go ahead, call whoever you want. My son is getting his photo. By now, several other visitors were openly filming, and another museum guide had appeared to help. The woman pushed her son forward, but to his credit, the boy seemed reluctant. Boy, Mom, I don't think we're supposed to. Woman, don't be silly. It's just a picture. Here, I'll show you it's fine. To my horror, she ducked under the rope herself and approached the dinosaur's leg. I was frantically waving to the security guard who had just entered the hall. Me, ma'am, get away from the exhibit immediately. Woman, oh, stop being so dramatic. These things are sturdy. They've been here for millions of years, haven't they? And then she did it. She grabbed the lowest part of the dinosaur's leg, a delicate ankle bone, and used it to hoist herself up. There was an audible cracking sound that made my stomach drop. A small piece of the fossilized bone broke off in her hand. The room went silent. Even she seemed shocked for a moment, staring at the small fragment in her palm. Then, to my disbelief, she tried to stick it back on, as if it were a broken toy. Woman, see? No big deal. It just needs some glue or something. By then, 2 security guards had arrived and were crossing to her. I was frozen in place, horrified. Security, ma'am, step away from the exhibit and hand over that fossil fragment. Woman, this little thing, it just fell off. It was probably already loose. Security, ma'am, you've just damaged a 200-million-year-old fossil. Please step away and come with us. She finally seemed to realize the seriousness of the situation. Her face went from red to pale. Woman, it was an accident. You can't blame me for poor maintenance. If it was properly secured, this wouldn't have happened. It was at this point that the museum director arrived, alerted by the commotion. He took one look at the broken fossil and the fragment in the woman's hand, and his face turned to stone. Director, security, please detain this visitor. Call the police immediately. Woman, police? For what? This is ridiculous. It was an accident. Director, ma'am, you've just committed an act of vandalism against a priceless scientific artifact. That little thing you broke is over 200 million years old and cannot be replaced. We have multiple witnesses and video evidence of you ignoring staff instructions and crossing barriers to climb on the exhibit. The security guards moved in, one taking the fossil fragment carefully from her hand and placing it in a small container, the other gently but firmly taking her by the arm. Her son was standing outside the barrier, looking mortified. Woman, get your hands off me. Do you know who my husband is? He'll sue this entire museum. This is assault. The security guard remained professional. Security, ma'am, please come with us quietly. The police are on their way. Woman, what about my son? I'm not leaving my son. Director, we'll have a staff member stay with him until another family member can pick him up, or until this matter is resolved. I ended up being the one to sit with her son in the staff break room while we waited for his father to arrive. The poor kid was so embarrassed he could barely speak. When his dad finally showed up, he looked equal parts furious and mortified. Dad, I am so sorry about this. I can't believe she would do something like this. Me, it's not your son's fault. He actually tried to tell her it wasn't allowed. The dad sighed and nodded, putting his arm around his son's shoulders. Dad, that sounds about right. I'll make sure the museum is compensated for the damage, whatever it takes. I later found out that the woman was charged with criminal damage to an artifact of scientific importance. The museum pressed charges to the fullest extent. The video of the incident went viral online, of course. People called her Dino Karen and Jurassic Karen. She ended up having to pay a massive fine and was banned from every museum in the state. The saddest part? Our paleontology team did their best, but that broken piece could never be perfectly reattached. There will always be a visible crack in that bone. All because one entitled woman thought the rules didn't apply to her and that a 200-million-year-old dinosaur skeleton would make a good photo prop for her son. I still work at the museum, but now part of my daily tour includes pointing out the repaired ankle bone on the Allosaurus as a reminder of why we have barriers and rules. Most visitors are respectful when they hear the story, but occasionally I'll see someone eyeing the barriers calculatingly, and I'll think, not on my watch. Story 3. I've been a firefighter for almost 10 years now, and I've seen pretty much everything. Burning buildings, car accidents, even a cat stuck in a tree, yes, that actually happens. But nothing prepared me for what happened last Tuesday. It was around 2 p.m. when we got the call. An elderly man had fallen in his home and couldn't get up. His medical alert button had notified us, and since we were the closest unit, we were dispatched right away. It wasn't a fire, but as first responders, we handle all kinds of emergencies. Me and my partner Jake rushed to the scene in our truck. The address was in one of those fancy neighborhoods with big houses and perfectly trimmed lawns. The kind where people care more about property values than being neighborly. We arrived at the house in about 6 minutes. The elderly man lived in a small blue house at the end of a cul-de-sac. There wasn't much room to park since the street was narrow, but we managed to position our truck in a way that gave us quick access to our equipment while still allowing other emergency vehicles to get through if needed. As we were grabbing our medical bags, I noticed a woman storming toward us from the house next door. She was wearing an expensive-looking jogging outfit and had the kind of haircut that screams, "I want to speak to your manager." I knew we were in for trouble before she even opened her mouth. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" she shouted, waving her arms frantically. I tried to be professional. "Ma'am, we're responding to a medical emergency. Your neighbor needs assistance." She put her hands on her hips and glared at me. "Well, your truck is blocking my driveway. I need to leave for my yoga class in 10 minutes. I glanced at her driveway. Our truck was partially blocking it, but there was still enough room for her to back out if she was careful. "I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am," I said, "but this is an emergency situation. We'll try to move the truck as soon as possible, but right now we need to attend to your neighbor who needs medical attention." Jake had already gone ahead to the house with some of our equipment. I needed to follow him with the rest of the supplies. "That's not good enough," she snapped. "Old Mr. Jenkins is always falling down. He does this all the time just to get attention. Move your truck now." I was shocked by her callousness. "Ma'am, we take all calls seriously. A fall for an elderly person can be life-threatening. Now please excuse me, I need to help my partner." As I tried to walk past her, she actually stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Don't you walk away from me. Do you know who I am? My husband plays golf with the fire chief." I took a deep breath. "Ma'am, please step aside. You're interfering with emergency services." She crossed her arms. "I'm not moving until you move that truck. This is ridiculous. I pay taxes for your salary, you know." By this point, Jake had come back out of the house, looking concerned. "Jake, we need the stretcher and the oxygen. He's having difficulty breathing." This was getting serious. I tried one more time with the woman. "Ma'am, This is now a potential life-threatening situation. I need to get this equipment inside immediately. Please move aside." "I don't care. Move your truck first," she screamed. "Jake, what's going on? We need to hurry. This lady won't let me pass because our truck is partially blocking her driveway," I explained. "Jake, are you serious?" "Ma'am, we have an emergency here." She turned to Jake with a look of pure entitlement. "And I have a yoga class. I'm going to be late." I'd had enough at this point. I stepped around her and rushed to the truck to get the stretcher and oxygen. She followed me, still yelling. "I want your badge number. I'm reporting you both. This is unacceptable." I grabbed the equipment and turned to her. "Ma'am, you need to step back now. You're interfering with emergency services, which is against the law." "How dare you threaten me? I know my rights." As I wheeled the stretcher toward the house, she actually tried to grab it to stop me. That's when I lost my patience. "Ma'am, if you don't back away right now, I will have to call the police and have you removed from the scene." "Go ahead, call them. I'd love to tell them how you're blocking my driveway." Jake had come back out and was helping me with the stretcher. "Jake, I already called for backup and police assistance. They're on their way." The woman's face turned an impressive shade of red. "You did what?" We ignored her and rushed inside with the equipment. Mr. Jenkins was indeed in bad shape. He had fallen and hit his head and was having trouble breathing. We immediately began treatment, but I could still hear the woman outside, now on her phone, presumably complaining to someone about us. About 5 minutes later, while we were stabilizing Mr. Jenkins, a police car pulled up. Through the window, I could see the woman immediately approach the officer, gesturing wildly toward our truck. We continued working on Mr. Jenkins, getting him onto the stretcher and preparing him for transport. His vitals were stabilizing, which was a good sign, but he definitely needed to go to the hospital for further evaluation. As we were carefully moving him out of the house, I saw the police officer talking to the woman. She didn't look happy. We loaded Mr. Jenkins into the ambulance that had arrived as backup. As I was giving the paramedics information about his condition, the police officer walked over to me. "Officer Rodriguez." "Hey Mike, everything okay with the patient?" "Yeah, he's stable now. Possible concussion and some respiratory distress, but the paramedics will take good care of him." "Officer Rodriguez, good to hear. Now, about that woman over there." I sighed. "Let me guess, she's filing a complaint?" "Officer Rodriguez, she tried to. But I've already written her up for interfering with emergency services. She admitted she tried to physically prevent you from bringing equipment to the patient." I was surprised. "Really? She admitted that?" "Officer Rodriguez. Oh yeah. She doesn't seem to understand that what she did was wrong. She kept saying her driveway was more important than, and I quote, some old man who falls all the time." Jake joined us, shaking his head. "Unbelievable." "Officer Rodriguez. Well, she'll have time to think about it when she gets the fine. Interfering with emergency services carries a $2,000 penalty in this county." At that moment, the woman marched over to us. "Are you talking about me? I demand to know what's going on." "Officer Rodriguez, ma'am, as I already explained, you're being cited for interfering with emergency services, which is a serious offense." "This is outrageous. I was just trying to leave my driveway." "Officer Rodriguez, according to your own statement, you physically blocked a firefighter from bringing life-saving equipment to a patient. That's interference, and it's against the law." "But my driveway." "Officer Rodriguez, ma'am, no driveway is more important than someone's life. Now, I've already issued the citation. You can contest it in court if you wish, but I suggest you go back to your house now." She snatched the citation from his hand and stormed off, but not before turning back to yell at me one more time. "This isn't over. I'm calling your chief. You'll be sorry." We watched her stomp back to her house, slamming the door behind her. "Jake, $10 says she actually tries to call the chief." "No bet," I replied. She definitely will. Officer Rodriguez chuckled. Don't worry about it. I'll make sure my report is very detailed about what happened here today. We finished up our paperwork and prepared to head back to the station. As we were climbing into our truck, I saw the woman watching us from her window, phone pressed to her ear. I couldn't help but wave cheerfully at her as we drove away. Sure enough, when we got back to the station, our chief was waiting for us with an amused look on his face. Chief, so I got an interesting call about you two blocking someone's driveway today. Jake and I exchanged glances. Let me guess, a woman in expensive workout clothes? I asked. Chief, the very same. She demanded I fire both of you immediately. And? Chief, and I told her that interfering with emergency responders is a serious offense, and she's lucky she's only getting a fine. Then I suggested she take a good hard look at her priorities in life. Jake, how'd she take that? Chief, she hung up on me. But Officer Rodriguez already called and filled me in on what really happened. You both did exactly the right thing. Later that evening, I called the hospital to check on Mr. Jenkins. He was doing much better and was expected to make a full recovery. That's the part of the job that matters, not entitled people who think their yoga class is more important than someone's life. I never saw the woman again, though I heard through Officer Rodriguez that she tried to contest the fine and lost. Apparently, the judge wasn't sympathetic to her claim that her driveway rights superseded emergency services. The fine was upheld, and she was ordered to pay court costs as well. Some people never learn, but at least justice was served that day. And more importantly, Mr. Jenkins got the help he needed, despite his neighbor's best efforts to prevent it. Story 4. My son Tommy is 8 years old and has been battling leukemia for the past 2 years. It's been incredibly hard on our family, especially Tommy. When the Make-A-Wish Foundation approached us and asked Tommy what his one wish would be, he immediately said he wanted to go to Disney World. He'd been obsessed with Disney movies since he was little, but we could never afford to take him there. Make-A-Wish set everything up for us. They arranged our flight, hotel, and gave us special Make-A-Wish passes that let us skip the lines for all the rides. Tommy was beyond excited when we arrived. Even though he was tired from his treatments, his eyes lit up when he saw the castle for the first time. Our second day at the park was when the incident happened. Tommy was having a great morning despite feeling a bit weak. We had been going on as many rides as possible while he still had the energy. The special passes were a lifesaver because Tommy couldn't stand in those long lines for hours. We were heading toward Space Mountain, which Tommy had been talking about non-stop. As we approached the Fast Pass entrance, I heard a loud voice behind us. Woman, excuse me, why are they getting to go in the fast line? We've been waiting for over an hour. I turned around to see a woman who looked to be in her 40s with her husband and 2 kids who seemed around 10 and 12 years old. She was pointing at us and looking angrily at the Disney employee at the entrance. Disney employee, ma'am, they have special passes. I need to ask you to return to the regular line. Woman, what kind of special passes? Why do they get special treatment? My kids have been waiting forever. The Disney employee tried to quietly explain the situation, but the woman wasn't having it. Woman, I don't care what kind of pass they have. My family paid good money to be here too. My kids deserve to go on this ride just as much as their kid does. By this point, Tommy was starting to get upset. He was holding tightly onto my hand and looking down at his shoes. The special Disney badge that Make-A-Wish had given him was clearly visible on his shirt. Ma'am, please keep your voice down. You're upsetting my son. That's when she marched right up to us and stood in our way. Woman, you people think you're so special. My kids have been looking forward to this ride all day, and they've been waiting in line for over an hour. Why should your kid get to skip ahead? I was trying to stay calm, but I was furious. My son has a Make-A-Wish pass. He's very sick and can't stand in lines that long. Woman, I don't believe you. He doesn't look sick to me. You're just trying to cheat the system. Tommy was wearing his hat to cover his hair loss from chemotherapy, but you could still tell he was ill if you looked at him. He was thin and pale, and he had his port access visible under his t-shirt. But this woman was so selfish, she couldn't see anything beyond her own inconvenience. Woman, my kids have waited longer. Hey, kid, why don't you let my kids go first since they've been waiting so long? She was actually talking directly to Tommy now, who was on the verge of tears. I stepped between them. Me, do not speak to my son. Please leave us alone. Woman, don't tell me what to do. I'm a paying customer just like you. Her husband finally spoke up. Husband, honey, maybe we should just wait our turn. Woman, no, this isn't fair. These people are scamming the system. I want to speak to a manager right now. The Disney employee had already called for security on their radio, and within minutes a security guard and a park manager arrived. Park manager, what seems to be the problem here? Woman, these people are cutting in line. We've been waiting for over an hour, and they just waltz right up to the front. I want the same passes they have. The park manager looked at Tommy's Make-A-Wish badge and then back at the woman with a stern expression. Park manager, ma'am, this young man is here on a Make-A-Wish trip. The foundation provides these passes to children with life-threatening illnesses. Woman, well, my kids wish they could skip the lines too. This is discrimination against healthy children. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tommy started crying at this point, and I just wanted to get him away from this awful woman. Park manager, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you and your family to come with me. Woman, fine, I want to file a formal complaint anyway. Security guard, ma'am, please lower your voice and come with us now. As they were leading the woman and her family away, she was still yelling. Woman, this isn't fair. I paid thousands of dollars for this trip. I'm going to call corporate and complain about all of you. Once they were gone, several Disney employees came over to check on Tommy. One of them was a character handler who asked if Tommy would like to meet his favorite character as a special surprise. They were incredibly kind and did everything they could to turn the situation around. About an hour later, while Tommy was enjoying an ice cream and had mostly forgotten about the incident, the park manager found us. Park manager, I wanted to let you know that the situation has been handled. That family's park passes have been revoked for the remainder of their stay due to harassment. Me, thank you. I appreciate how quickly you responded. Park manager, we have zero tolerance for that behavior, especially toward our Make-A-Wish families. We want to make sure the rest of your visit is magical. The manager gave Tommy some special Disney pins and arranged for us to have a special viewing spot for the parade that night. Later, I overheard some employees talking about how the woman had been escorted out of the park. Apparently, she had caused scenes at other attractions too, demanding special treatment and yelling at staff. Her behavior toward a Make-A-Wish child was the final straw. The rest of our trip was wonderful. Tommy got to meet all his favorite characters and go on every ride he wanted to without any more incidents. The Disney staff went above and beyond to make sure he had the trip of his dreams. As we were leaving on our final day, Tommy said it was the best week of his life. Despite that horrible woman's behavior, the magic of Disney prevailed. Tommy didn't focus on that one bad moment, but instead on all the amazing experiences he had. I later wrote to Disney to thank them for how they handled the situation. They responded with a lovely letter for Tommy and some more gifts. They assured me that they take the safety and happiness of all guests seriously, especially their Make-A-Wish visitors. It's been 6 months since our trip, and Tommy still talks about it constantly. His treatments are going well, and the doctors are optimistic. Whenever he has a hard day, we look at the photos from our Disney trip, and it cheers him up. I still can't believe someone could be so entitled and heartless toward a sick child, but I'm grateful for how Disney handled it. They turned what could have been a traumatic experience into just a small bump in an otherwise magical journey.